This is Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. Whenever you need a break from the heat, you know what we say in Chicago. It's cooler by the lake. But then again, is it? Lake Michigan's temperatures have been changing. This summer and fall, the lake is the warmest it's ever been in documented history. And it's not just this lake. All 5 Great Lakes are among the fastest warming lakes in the world. This, of course, means a longer beach swimming season, but it could change a lot more than that. More intense storms, changes for migratory birds and fish, and perhaps more erosion and smaller beaches. So to help us better understand these changes, we're joined now by WBEZ's environment reporter, Juanpablo Ramirez-Franco. Hey, Juanpablo.
What's up, Sasha?
Good to see you again. So you and I, of course, we work right here on Navy Pier, right on Lake Michigan. We catch that nice lake breeze. So I think sometimes maybe we're a little too close to the situation to notice the lake, as you report, is getting warmer. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, on some level, it's hard to notice, right? Because we go out there, we can swim longer, it feels nice, we're there with our friends, but it is getting warmer. So right before I came on, I checked the charts, and today...
I thought you were going to say right before you came on, you went and tapped
No,
your toes, dipped your toes in the lake.
But today and for the last couple days, since our story came out last Friday, Lake Michigan has actually broken heat records. So on average, surface temperatures are circling around 69 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh,
That's
wow.
warm for late September. And what that means is that no other year since scientists at NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, started tracking surface temperatures via satellite in 1995, there hasn't been a year or a late September this warm since we started
Oh, my goodness.
keeping track.
Well, let's dig in here. In your story, you talk with Drew Grunwald, who's an environmental expert at the University of Michigan, and he told you winter is vanishing from the Great Lakes. Wow, that's dramatic and serious sounding. What does he mean by that?
It does sound kind of dramatic. So what it's referring to here is that there's this longer term trend towards warmer winters and decreasing ice across the Great Lakes region. So if we take a longer view here, so on average, winter temperatures in the upper Midwest, they've gone up by several degrees, just going back 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this is important because the way heat accumulates in the lakes in one season largely determines what happens in the following season. So a warm winter, there's less ice. All of a sudden, this is leading to warmer possible conditions for the summer.
So as you said here, the temperature of Lake Michigan now, you said it was what, high 60s?
High 69,
69.
68.
How is that different so we're clear as to what it's been typically?
What it's been typically. So there's a lot of natural variability occurring in Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes generally. That's because major climatic patterns, so like El Nino or polar vortex, can swing into the region and swing it in either direction.
Mm-hmm.
But when we look at data for average surface water temperatures and data for ice that forms in the winter months over the Great Lakes, what we see is that despite that variability, where we can have these swings,
Mm-hmm.
there is this clear warming trend. The warmer waters, the very little ice cover, all of this are very clear signs of a sort of climate change sort of fingerprint over the Great Lakes.
And is it happening quickly or is it sort of taking its time?
Is it happening quickly? That's a good question. So once again, scientists say that, for example, those big markers of no ice,
Mm-hmm.
Ice isn't disappearing, just to be clear here. But there will certainly still be cold years in the years to come. But when we talk about how quickly things are warming in the Great Lakes, there are estimates. So as much as 7 degrees Fahrenheit by 2050 and 12 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100.
Oh, wow. And as I alluded to at the top there, it's not just Lake Michigan, right, Juanpablo? It's all 5 Great Lakes
It's all
that we're
5.
talking about here. So what are we seeing in the others?
Yeah. So Lake Superior, which is the furthest north and thus the coldest of all the Great Lakes, it's actually warming the fastest. And it's warming up to 3 times the global average. So right now it's at a rate about 1.1 degrees Celsius per decade. There's lots of reasons for that. Part of it is depth. Lake Superior is the deepest lake, and so it takes longer to cool when temperatures are high. Then we have Lake Erie, which is kind of the shallowest lake furthest south,
Mm-hmm.
and thus the warmest. But there were times this summer, Lake Erie was basically kissing 80 degrees.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
So-
that's pretty warm.
Yeah, we're approaching bathwater
How's
territory.
Lake Ontario doing? My old friend.
Lake Ontario's all right. I
Okay.
mean, still warming, but it's doing its thing.
80 degrees, though, for Lake Erie.
Yeah.
My goodness. I'd jump in that right now, but that's also not good. You mentioned how this will affect wildlife in your story. So I want you to talk about that, Juanpablo, and what the rising temperatures mean for the animals connected to these Great
Yeah.
Lakes.
You know, these lakes have experienced some kind of ice cover since they were formed during the last glacial period. So entire communities of life have evolved around this freezing and thawing cycle. And again, this is like a massive freshwater ecosystem.
Yeah.
So many different animals, species depend on it.
Birds,
Birds, fish.
fish.
Just to name two, fish biologists are thinking really closely or really seriously about fish like the lake trout and the whitewater or the whitefish. These are fish that depend on cold water as part of their life cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about, certain parts of the year where we see those fishermen outside as
Yeah.
we're coming into work, right? What about land animals?
Land animals, jury's still out. We're still figuring that out. But it's going to be felt across the food web, the ecosystem. Everybody notices. It's not one thing.
So I want to jump back to ice cover, which you talked a bit about earlier, right? I imagine that has changed a lot through this period as well.
Yeah. So between 1973 and 2023, we've been losing approximately 5% of our ice cover per decade. So today, there is something like 25% less ice cover than there was 50 years ago. That's a huge chunk.
That sounds
That's a
important.
huge chunk
Yeah.
of ice that we're missing, right? To bring that back to 2024, this year has been the fourth lowest year of ice cover on the lakes. And while that isn't, groundbreaking, it's not the first. What we're really charting here is a general trend towards a movement where warmth is the norm.
And for the person who's lost here, why is ice cover important?
Yeah.
Why is that something that they're looking into?
Yeah, certainly. So, ice during the winter months actually forms a kind of protective buffer between the lakeshore and stormy waters. So when there's less of that buffer, that means there's more erosion, which isn't ideal for a city like ours that's built on the lakeshore.
So more erosion leads to less beach?
Less beach?
Yeah. So for humans, this is going to mean a lot for us as well.
Yeah, existential.
Oh my goodness. So how does this warming affect our weather?
Yeah. So the way that climate change is really being felt in the Midwest and the upper Great Lakes region, maybe, it will mean that we're going to experience warmer, wetter winters, springs with heavy precipitation. That's think extreme rainfall events, and hotter summers with longer dry periods, which if we think back just in the last month, drought, we didn't see rain for weeks and weeks on weeks.
Yeah. So we do love to not plunge into a frigid lake when we swim. You spoke with some swimmers and you asked them how it felt. I want to play a quick snippet of some of the responses you got.
Delicious.
Incredible.
Beautiful.
Yeah, really warm.
So big fans of the warmer lake.
They were loving it. There's this really funny moment happened that didn't make the cut where one of the guys was like, climate change made this great. And I was like, oh no. But
Oh, no. Oh goodness. Someone said delicious too.
they said delicious. It was a really beautiful day. I see where they're coming from.
So what would you say to people like the folks that we just heard who are loving this change?
What would I say to them?
Yeah, because
I would say
it's not a good thing.
It's not a good. Well, and they were joking about it for sure. But the flip side of that is that they were also thinking very seriously about what was going on. So when they went back to where their towels were by the grass, they were like, the grass is brittle. The grass is dry. It's crazy that we're jumping into a lake that's this warm as there isn't any rain. And they were thinking very seriously about what the future pretends for them. And so, they were kind of glib about it and they were making the best of it. But this is something that they were thinking about.
Yeah, that's really important to know. So I want to sort of ask you a big question here, but what can be done, if anything, to reverse this trend? Is there a way around this?
Sasha, some of this is just baked in. Decades of digging up fossil fuels and burning them has changed the makeup of the atmosphere in a way that locks in heat for us down here on Earth. So some of this is just locked in.
Yeah.
We don't have to keep burning fossil fuels the way we do. That's a policy decision. But, what we can do about our shorelines, what we do with our shorelines and how we equip them for the turbulent years ahead, that will be a big part of how we answer that question.
So what are the ways that people can support the lakes so that they stay healthy.
Yeah, talk to their alderman. If you live in a ward that's on the lakeshore, talk to your alderman about why it's armored or why there aren't natural shorelines. These are all questions that you can be bringing up to your alderman and asking.
Yeah. We'll leave it there. We've been talking with Juanpablo Ramirez-Franco, who's an environment reporter for WBEZ. Thank you, Juanpablo.
Thanks, Sasha.
All right, before we take a break, we want to hear from you on our question of the week. So with inflation high and housing affordability low, we want to know, are you considering or do you currently live in multi-generational housing? According to Pew Research, about 1 in 4 of all adults ages 25 to 34 now live in a multi-generational home. That's a household with 2 or more adult generations. We'll be talking about multi-generational housing later this week on the program. So, are you a caregiver and maybe you live with your parents? Are you an adult grandchild and live with both your parents and theirs? Did you maybe grow up living with relatives? What was that like and how did it impact your childhood? We're also interested in hearing from people who don't live with blood relatives. What's it like to create supportive living situations with friends? Whatever your situation, give us a call and share how and why it works for you. Our number is 888-915-9945. Again, 888-915-9945. You can also send an email to reset@wbez.org. We might include your comments later this week on the program.